Hello, my creeplings. So I'm going to indulge myself this month. It's August. I'm going to turn 44 this month. So I thought I'd just celebrate by sharing some of my favorite things with you. And I'm just going to say it. I have been deep in watching these lately for many, many different reasons, but I keep wanting to come back and revisit them. And we're just going to talk about my favorite series right now. It's been my favorite series for quite a while. We're just going to dive headfirst into Sam Raimi's Evil Dead series. We will not be going over the reboot/remake from, 2013? And nor will I be talking about Evil Dead Rise right now. I have not seen either of those yet. I'm specifically talking about the saga of Ash Williams. That poor man. That's all I'm going to say. So this particular video is going to talk about the first Evil Dead movie, and I'm going to warn you, I'm going to gush. I'm going to go off on tangents, and this might be a long video. I can remember the first time I watched this movie. My now husband, boyfriend at the time, and a longtime friend of mine from high school were all hanging out. Now, this particular guy friend that we were hanging out with, his girlfriend was gone for the summer, and he was bored. He was missing his girlfriend, and we were trying to keep his mind off of it. So we went and we rented horror movies because that's something we all kind of wanted to do, was sit and watch movies. And my friend and I were big horror geeks. Now, I had remembered staring down the VHS cover of Evil Dead 2. So we decided we were going to rent both the original Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. Mid-afternoon, we're at my husband's family's home because nobody else was there. They had the best TV set up. They had this huge big screen. It was awesome. We're sitting there and we're watching this. And the whole time I'm just thinking, what the fuck? In a good way. Totally in a good way. We shut it off. I can remember looking at my friend and my husband and asking them, or saying, I don't know what the fuck I just watched, but I fucking loved this. And then we watched the second one, and at that point, I had fallen in love. Because everything was so outrageous, and this first one was so DIY. So, okay, first tangent of the day. A little backstory on some of the terminology I use. I have talked about this in, I think, a video or two before, but just a quick review. I refer to this group of people by either, sometimes I'll just throw Renaissance Pictures out there because that's their production company. But not everybody involved is a member of Renaissance Pictures. So I tend to refer to them as the Detroit Movie Men, the Michigan Movie Men, or the Detroit Movie Mafia, or the Michigan Movie Mafia. All of those terms are interchangeable, excuse me, for these particular individuals, and I hope I don't miss anybody. So, yes, I do have notes. I'm going to sit them down for a minute so I can use my hands to help me count off everybody here. So, this involves the Raimi boys, all three of them. Sam, specifically, was the first one. And then Teddy got involved. Yes, I just called him I can't believe I just called him Teddy. Oh my god. Ted. Sorry, Teddy sounds like a 4-year-old, but I've been watching behind the scenes stuff, and some of them refer to him as Teddy. Sorry, Ted. If you don't like it, I didn't mean it. And Ivan. So they're part of the Detroit Movie Mafia, the Michigan Movie Men, whatever. Robert Tappert is part of this group. He's their big producer buddy, but he did start out in the Super 8 days in high school, also, acting and helping out on these Super 8 shorts that got them started. Of course, we cannot forget Bruce Campbell, Scott Spiegel, and Josh Becker. Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. If I forget anybody, I tend to kind of sometimes throw Joseph Loduca, the composer, in there because he does a lot of stuff with them. Sometimes Bruce's brother Don shows up as either an extra or a body double or production help, because I mean, in these early days, like this Evil Dead era, the original, and the Super 8 years that preceded this, they would get all their family and friends to show up and help. When I say Super 8 years, these guys all met because they either lived in the same neighborhoods, went to the same high school, and they were all making movies with Super 8 cameras. So either some of them had their strengths in acting, some of them in filming, some of them in writing, some of them in effects. And they all kind of got together and were doing a lot of like just hobby work together, and they're all like, well, we want to actually get into the business. So when I refer to the Super 8 years, that's usually high school, early college. And if I refer to the Detroit Movie Mafia, the Michigan Movie Men, etc., it's that particular core group of people. So this actually started with a short that's about 30 minutes long. You can find it on YouTube. If I remember, I will put links for some of the things that I'm talking about that you can find on YouTube in the description. If I don't, I'm sorry. They're usually pretty easy to find. So this started off with a 30-minute proof of concept short called Within the Woods. And you have Bruce, Ellen Sandwich, and I cannot remember the name of the other actor and actress. One of them might have been Scott, and I don't remember the other actress. And it's the same idea as to what's going on here. So they made this and they used it to sell the idea to potential investors. So they get enough money. They rewrite the script a couple times. Now, this is where my notes come in. Oh, and if you're going to ask, yes, I have a nasty bruise there. I ended up in the ER. And I apologize if this is TMI, but I woke up feeling like someone was twisting my kidney inside out. And it turns out I was trying to pass a kidney stone. And this is what happens when you try to put an IV in me. So now that that's out of the way, I have a lot of them. I have a small one here that's really light, and then I've got some on this arm too. Took them 4 tries. Isn't that fun? So, no, I'm not in trouble. No one's hurting me or anything. But, I mean, yeah, that's pretty cool looking, isn't it? I know, isn't that cool? But I digress. So, this was released in 1981. So, I think they filmed this over the course of 1980. This was Sam's first major picture. This was not one of the little Super 8 30-minute, or less hobby films. This is his first Hollywood, even though it wasn't really Hollywood thing. But you have a lot of these names show up. So written by Sam, directed by Sam, produced by Robert. Joseph Loduca does the music. New Line Cinema released this, distributed it. This was released in April in 1983, but it had its premiere at the Redford Theater in Michigan, October 15th, 1981. So that would have been a really good movie to see then. Stephen King loved this movie, and I think that's how it kind of became a breakout. He gave them a rave review, I think, after seeing them at Cannes. So anyway, I'm really going off story. Sorry. We start off with 5. So we go from in the proof of concept short 4. Now we have 5 Michigan State University students. We have Ash Williams, played by Bruce Campbell. We have Cheryl Williams, Ash's younger sister, played by Ellen Sandweiss. We have their buddy Scott, played by, he's billed as Hal Dietrich, but his real name is Richard DeManicore. We have Ash's girlfriend, Linda, played by an actress named Betsy Baker, and Scotty's girlfriend, Shelley, played by, she billed herself as Sarah York at the time, but her real name is Teresa Tilley. And these are the only people we deal with. This is a very small cast. You will see Rob, I believe Rob and Sam at the beginning as two guys on the side of the road fishing. And then there's one other, it's a voice credit. So it's a very small cast, and all of these guys, I believe, all went to high school together. I know Ellen went to school with Bruce and Sam, and rumor has it that she had a bit of a crush on Bruce at the time, so that had to be pretty fun. Because from what I understand, these filming conditions were hell. But anyway, they're all going on a vacation in the Tennessee hills. It specifically says Tennessee in this one. I say this now because in future videos when we talk about 2 and Army of Darkness and the television series Ash vs. the Evil Dead, you're going to find that continuity in this series is not very good. But they're vacationing at this very rundown cabin, and they're like, okay, we're going to make the best of it. So on the way there, they almost get hit by a semi-truck. Oh, this is also the first appearance of the Delta. Now, those of you who are Sam Raimi fans know that in every one of his videos or movies, he's got I cannot remember the year off the top of my head, and I'm sorry, but it is a Delta 88. It is this yellowy beige color. It's his car. It used to be their mom's car. And again, you can find all this information. I believe they interviewed Ted about it for Ash vs. Evil Dead. I know Bruce has talked about this thing a lot. But at one point in time, it was Mrs. Raimi's car. Then she gave it to Sam, and Sam's been using it ever since. Like, this thing is like, I don't know if it's a good luck charm. Bruce has hypothesized Sam lost his virginity in the back, and that's why he's not getting rid of it. Okay, Bruce, that's nice of you to put out there. I either saw that in an interview or I read that in If Chins Could Kill, which is Bruce Campbell's his first autobiography. Don't get me started. Well, we'll go off on how much I love Bruce a little bit here and there. One of these days I will do a Bruce Campbell video, and y'all, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So they drive up to the cabin. At first, we as the audience are kind of tripped off to something weird because the porch swing keeps banging into the building. One would think that it's a breeze, but then it just automatically stops. Well, they get settled in, and Cheryl is an artist. So Cheryl was sitting there drawing this really nice looking older clock on the wall, and her hand gets possessed and she starts drawing this book with the face on it. And it scares the living shit out of her. I mean, it would scare me. Side note, Ellen Sandweiss is like the queen of the hysterical scream. She plays hysterical like very few people I have ever seen, and I love it. Cheryl, if I ever have to play, do hysterical screaming and acting, I'm going to try and channel you, my dear. You are like the queen. So, they're having dinner after this. Cheryl's still kind of squicked out, but she doesn't say anything. Cellar door flips open. Just wide open. And this isn't like a door in the wall. This is your good old-fashioned trap door in the floor, fruit cellar, root cellar, whatever, storage cellar, whatever you want to call it. I know regionally it's different things. Hell, I mean, in the Midwest we'll call them just about anything. So of course Scotty goes down to take a look, and you kind of find out Scotty's a little bit of a stinker. He's down there a little too long. The girls start panicking and send Ash back down to go find him. Ash finds him. Now, I do want to make a note. When Ash goes down into the cellar it's kind of like what they did with, I don't want to say the soundtrack, but like, not the music, but like the sounds. The floor creaking, the water dripping, the door creaking. They jacked that sound up just enough to really start making you feel unnerved. It's really, it's a very effective use of sound to set tone. I'm finding the more that I watch the Sam Raimi kind of weird stuff, that's like, he's really good at taking things that you normally wouldn't think of and just kind of ticking them up or ticking them down just enough to make you just kind of, you're like, something isn't quite, it's off. And I think that's what makes him such a great filmmaker. I'm getting off story again. Scotty's down there. He finds a reel-to-reel, like old-fashioned reel-to-reel tape deck, the book that Cheryl had drawn, and this funky-looking dagger. Art direction on this, considering this was extremely DIY, they were building their own camera rigs, and the effects are so bad they're good. But it's early 1980s, no budget, so yeah, so considering that, the art direction on those two pieces, the book and especially that dagger, were really, really nice. I'm sorry, I did not mean to yawn. It's getting kind of late here, but I literally just watched this movie and I'm like, I better do this before I fall asleep. So they bring the tape up and they're all just kind of sitting around, lounging around. I can't remember, is it Ash or Scotty? Scotty plays the tape, and it's sorry, I have an itch. It is a vocal recording of the person who used the cabin before this. Again, in Evil Dead 2, some continuity questions will come up, and if I remember to, we will address those about who owns the cabin. And some other things that kind of, don't make sense going back watching the first one after seeing the second one. Scotty plays the tape. Professor Noby, who was the gentleman using the cabin before, is an archaeologist, and he's translating what's in this nasty looking book with a face on it. Turns out he's calling demons. And Cheryl gets squicked out, not crazed. She definitely gets agitated though. And she's like, I'm going and getting ready for bed. I'm going to bed. And she gets ready for bed, but she starts hearing stuff, so she goes out to the woods to investigate. And here is one of the more infamous scenes in horror cinema that probably would never get made today. I have my theories on this. I don't know if y'all want to hear them or not, but I'll probably throw a few out there when we talk about this. She goes out into the woods, and the woods come alive, and unfortunately, the woods assault her. Now, it's not like Japanese manga tentacle levels of gratuitous, but there were some things that could have not been shot, and you still would have gotten the idea that the woods were alive. But I've actually been kind of thinking about this on and off. So if the demons are infecting the woods and making them come alive, if these demons live and thrive off of pain and suffering, there is not much more that I can think of that would bring instant anguish, suffering, and pain to a woman than being assaulted like that. So maybe I'm looking too deep into it, and I don't know. like I said, that scene would have to be cut down and definitely would not fly the way it's presented in the film today. But at least I can make it make sense in my head. It just doesn't feel super gratuitous if I look at it that way. It's kind of the argument of, you know, things like Dumbo and Song of the South and Gone with the Wind and, you know, other movies, you know, they're a product of their time. This is, I mean, maybe this is just a product of, this particular scene is a product of its time. Kind of got off on a tangent, but that's kind of where my brain went on this, what, umpteenth, thousandth watch of this film, is why would the trees assault her that way? And one of the things I came up with was, if it's demons, and demons live off of anguish and fear and anger and hate and all that, that is one act that will definitely cause a lot of those feelings. In a woman, I can say that as a woman, from my point of view, most likely a man too. I mean, nobody wants to be assaulted in a very personal way. I was sitting on something, but I think I fixed it. Okay. So we get Cheryl back in the house. She starts panicking and freaking out and telling Ash she wants to leave. So Ash is like, okay, fine. We'll take you into town. You can stay someplace for tonight, and then we'll figure out what we're doing tomorrow. Well, they had to cross this rickety-ass old bridge to get to the cabin. Once they get to the bridge, they realize the bridge has been basically blown out. So Cheryl freaks, oh my God, the woods aren't going to let us leave. We're going to die here. She's like really in an anxiety attack, and that's putting it mildly. I mean, she knows what's up. This poor girl. And we will definitely poor girl her later in the series too. So one by one, we get Cheryl back. One by one, everyone gets either infected or attacked. To be infected, I use the term infected, or possessed. Cheryl stabs Linda with the pencil. And then I think she scratches... No, how does Shelley get it? Demon crashes through a window and attacks Shelley, and therefore possesses Shelley. Shelley ends up scratching Scotty. They're all, by the end of this, are possessed. Linda turns into this kind of like, she's got this little girlish, and the demon voices that they use, they're so unnerving. They got this like reverby rattle. But, you know, Linda comes out from the bedroom and sits on the floor, and she's got her deadite face going, and she's like, we're gonna get you, we're gonna get you. It's just so freaky and, like, creepy, childish. They lock Cheryl in the fruit cellar, and she's constantly banging to get out. Scott tries to leave, ends up getting attacked by the trees, and comes back. So we're left with Ash as the only one that is not possessed, and all of his friends are trying to kill him. Linda attacks him. He drags her outside. First appearance of the chainsaw, but not in the iconic way that we're used to. He was going to dismember her, but decides not to. Goes to bury her. She comes back to life and ends up decapitating her with a shovel. Shelley gets dismembered and buried. And now we're left down with Cheryl, who breaks out of the cellar, and Scotty. And they both attack Ash. Well, in the attack, the book gets knocked off of a table or something and right in front of the fire. And Ash starts to see that as the book is close enough to the fire, it's starting to smoke. Scotty is too. So he uses this necklace that he gave Linda as a gift It's a little magnifying glass on a chain, very, little Victorian look. To kind of try to grab it because he's only like this far away. And Scotty's pulling him away. Cheryl's gonna bash him with a not a braiding iron, a fire iron, the iron for moving the logs. He manages to get it, throws the book in the fire, and Cheryl and Scotty goo out. Demon hands come out of the butt. The effects on that one look like they were made out of shit like cream corn and creamed rice and soup, and they're spitting up, it looks like milk. It's an effective use of food for disgustingness. And then the movie ends. It's morning and we don't know if what Ash is gonna do after this. Poor man's probably got PTSD now. No one's gonna believe him. He just killed his sister, his girlfriend, his best friend, one of his best friends, and his girlfriend. I'm sorry, Ash. I really am. Now, when people talk about the Evil Dead and Ash Williams and talk about what a badass Ash Williams is, I'm going to say it does not really show up much in this particular film. A lot of what we consider the iconic Ashness, is what I'm calling it, comes in part 2. There are hints of it here. Instead of having a final girl, Ash is our final boy. But he's not quippy. He still has his hand. The chainsaw only makes a slight appearance. He is carrying around the rifle. He hasn't called it his boomstick yet. This is just pure horror. This is pure just fright, scares, no real humor. But again, for a first outing, they had a solid story. Even though everyone in their cast was pretty much amateurs, they all slammed it out of the park. This is where you can really see the start of Bruce Campbell becoming a solid actor. Now, I want to say at the time he was like working in summer stock theater, and so like he never stopped acting once they got out of school. And it wasn't just like one of those, I'm just going to pick this up and keep doing the Super 8 stuff. No, he went and he honed his craft. So, and you can see that. He plays, on the edge of crazy very well here. He's a very sympathetic character. You can tell that, like, he and Ellen knew each other very well. They played off of each other very well. They did get that brother-sister dynamic pretty well. This is where Sam really started to use, like, what they call them Dutch angles and weird pans to really put his stamp on that kind of, I dare say surrealist, but I'm not sure if it's meant to be surrealist, but just enough to kind of tilt you off your rocker there. The critics ate this up. Once Stephen King put his stamp of approval on it. I want to say this is where, all right, I got to check notes because there's a lot with this. Story. Yeah, they didn't have any like location manager or anything. They had to scout all that themselves. So they filmed the cabin in Tennessee, which I'm going to put a PSA out there. This is from Bruce Campbell himself. Do not try and go and find where the cabin was. It's on private property. It's been burnt down. And the owner of said property will shoot on site, from what I understand. Don't be a dick. Just appreciate the fact that it was made. Okay? There are other places you can, go check out movie locations. This is not one of them. please heed, Bruce's plea. Do not go and get yourself shot just to go stand in the middle of the woods where there's a crumbling fireplace. PSA over. Yeah. There's just this movie, in this movie series is like just one of those things that, like, I think this is where my love of DIY horror comes from. Now, the Coen boys, Ethan and Joel, were actually editors on this too, and that got them a relationship with with Renaissance Pictures and the Raimi boys, mostly Sam. I think Ivan's gone in and cleaned up scripts for them. Don't quote me on that. I've been doing a lot of research and I'm getting my Raimi boys kind of mixed up sometimes. Don't worry. I'll never mix up who's, Ted's work because, well, it's Ted. I told you guys, this is me doing this for my birthday. I'm going to let myself gush. But yeah, they showed the film to anyone willing to watch it, booking meetings with distribution agents and anyone with experience in the film industry. I'm going through the notes here. Eventually, Sam came across Irvin Shapiro. Now, if his name sounds familiar to you old school horror fans, he's the guy that got Romero's Night of the Living Dead distributed. And he's been known in the horror genre to get films like that out. He saw commercial potential. He expressed interest in distributing it. They brainstormed, because this was originally going to be called The Book of the Dead, and then they changed it to The Evil Dead for naming purposes. Shapiro also advised doing a worldwide distribution, so that way you can get more income back and pay your investors back. Now, Shapiro was also a founder of the Cannes Film Festival, and this screened there. Screened in the 1982 festival, but out of competition. So it wasn't there to win awards, it was just there to screen. And that's where Stephen King saw it. And then when Stephen King saw it and started gushing about it, everybody jumped on it. So, he became one of the the largest supporters early on in the deal. The horror magazine Fangoria started covering it in 82. So when it was finally released, it had a lot of buzz around it. So now this was also one of the, I believe, according to my analytics, I have some viewers in the UK, or some people in the UK have watched my videos. If you are a UK viewer and you can elaborate on this one a little bit more for me. This was a video nasty, wasn't it? Where it wasn't able to be released because of the censorship climate at the time. I hesitate to say laws, but I think there were laws in place to keep movies like this from being distributed. So yeah, this is one of the infamous video nasties, because at the time they considered it so graphic. It definitely had a very impressive European performance. It was released in Britain, but I think after a while they either had it cut. If anybody knows the history of that, explain that to me, because I know I've seen this on lists talking about video nasties. So, in the timeline of, Renaissance Pictures and the Raiminess and all that, yes, there's another term I use a lot, the Raiminess. Sam's got this big hit with Evil Dead. So, he's trying to figure out what to follow it up with. So this is where I'm going to start talking about things that lead into the next video, which is Evil Dead 2. And I'll recap those for the next video as well. But, okay, so before I do that, my thoughts Like I said, the first time I watched this, I honestly said something along the lines of, I don't know what the hell I just watched, or the fuck I just watched, but I fucking love this. Now, at the time, I did not put two and two together that Renaissance Pictures, that was responsible for one of my favorite syndicated shows at the time, Xena Warrior Princess, was the same group of guys that did this 10 years earlier, 15 years earlier, whatever it was. I did not register that some random movies that I had seen were all done by these guys. I was young. I was, just really getting into figuring out directors and actors. When I was a kid, I would consume media like junk food. No nuance. If it just gimme. I mean, yeah, by a certain point, I had favorite movies. I had seen that I had certain actors keep showing up. I knew I loved horror movies, but it could have been anything from an 80s slasher to a Stephen King film to a sci-fi horror movie like Species. I was watching all of that stuff. This, in a way, was kind of one of those things that started me going down the, I like this, I want more of this particular flavor. Will this actor give me the same flavor? And when I really started doing research into it, and I realized that everything, there were a lot of things that I had watched from all these guys, they all kind of meshed together. I'm like, oh. And that's what really started my journey through cinema. Granted, it's still horror cinema and sci-fi cinema and stupid comedies. It's not highbrow stuff. Some of it is, considered highbrow stuff, but not most of it. It's all popcorn movies. And this is a popcorn movie to me. This is a wonderful horror movie that is a popcorn movie that I will just watch the hell out of left and right. So they had this big hit, right? Well, Sam and company followed this up with a comedy called Crime Wave. Yes, I have seen Crime Wave. It flopped. It did not do well at all. If you want me to do a video on Crime Wave, I might. I didn't find it to be that bad. But I didn't like it as much as I like a lot of their other stuff. But that was kind of a take on Golden Age of Hollywood. It had a touch of that kind of Golden Age of Hollywood screwball comedy. With a murder mystery kind of Rear Window-ish type thing going on. It was cast okay. The two guys that play the antagonists were cast perfectly. Bruce shows up in a small role where he plays just an asshole. We've talked about Louise Lasser on videos here before, I believe, and she was in it. She was okay. Ted makes a little cameo as a youngin'. Almost didn't recognize him for a minute. It was kind of weird. He was very cute when he was that age, though. I say that now. But it was okay. I'm not going to say it was, Sam's best work, but it's not bad either. I watched it, I think, on Roku. But he did that, and his reputation was in the toilet. So I believe, let me just check. Yeah, after Crime Wave, which came out in 1985, Bruce and Rob and Sam started brainstorming, well, what do we need to do to make money and get our names back out there? And they just kind of came up with, well, we could do a sequel to Evil Dead. And that's going to bring us to our next video. I will say, if you have not seen this movie and you call yourself a horror fan, I would definitely take a minute to enjoy this series. Because without this series, we wouldn't have a lot of other stuff. I mean, if the master of horror himself loved it, it's got to be worth, watching. It's fast-paced. To me, it never dragged. So it was like, boom, 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 boom. Watched it. I didn't realize 85 minutes had gone by, or however long it was. If you are a Bruce Campbell fan from watching him on more recent things like Burn Notice was like what, 2010s, or seeing him in other random things that he's done over the years, this is early Bruce. This is baby-faced, beautiful little puppy dog-eyed Bruce. So it's kind of nice to go back and watch someone's early work and see how they've blossomed. I've done this with a lot of actors and actresses that I absolutely love, and it's an interesting thing to watch. So Evil Dead is definitely one of those where if you want to see, a director who can do so many different genres, because the guy himself, I think Sam feels, whenever I read something about Sam, the guy feels like he's a walking encyclopedia of cinema. Like, he appreciates it all, between the Three Stooges, Universal Monsters, Hitchcock, screwball comedy. I mean, the guy's done so much, and he's gotten so many accolades. You gotta see where they started. If you're a Xena Warrior Princess fan and you want to see where these guys got started, it's right there. A lot of their Super 8 stuff is also available here on YouTube or the Internet Archive. I have watched a lot of it. So to see how they've come from doing things like Cleveland Smith, Bounty Hunter, Toro, Within the Woods, to, what was Sam's most recent thing? Wasn't it Multiverse of Madness? And, watching Bruce go from that to My Name is Bruce and Bubba Hotep, and to watch their comedic chops and their dramatic chops just grow is a treat. Evil Dead is where it pretty much all started commercially. So I highly recommend this one. Now, like I said, we're going through the saga of Ash Williams. So I'm going to go and plan out and rewatch for the gazillionth time Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. And I will get back to you with more thoughts on that one. So that one's going to be probably a bit longer than this one, and this one's probably going to be one of my longest videos ever so far. And there will be a lot more gushing and a lot more behind the scenes talk, because that's where we start bringing in heavier hitters. We have, and some more recurring faces in the Raimi-verse, whatever you want to call it. But these effects were done by a friend of theirs, I believe. We get into Evil Dead 2, we start bringing the K&B guys in. We've got, Ted in the role that got him his Screen Actors Guild card. One of the actors who shows up in this ends up becoming what I call one of their ensemble players. We get more into the lore of what the Book of the Dead is, that gnarly looking book. And there's also some controversy as to whether or not is it a sequel or a remake or both. Bruce himself has the answer to that, and like I said, if I remember, I will link it in the appropriate video where everything is. So on that note, I'm going to let you guys go and say a good night, my creeplings, and I'll see you next time. Bye.